Hi, my name is Randall Crowder, and I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to ramp in this role. A lot of people ask, if I'm doing this commission only, when can I expect to see some cash coming in? And really, the question is a tough one to answer because it's up to you. As I talked about in some of the training with a lot of people who are probably watching this video, we've seen people make placements in 48 hours. We've also seen people, take a pretty concerted effort and not have a lot to show for it. And it's always kind of hard to say what clicks and what doesn't with folks. I want to say it's initiative. I want to say that it's being able to build that rapport over the phone. I want to say it's follow up, consistency. Sometimes it's just about whether or not you can cut through the noise and reach the people who are making the decisions. And that's not always easy. And so I think the people who are able to do that well, and if you talk to Andy, our founder, he talks about staying close to money. If you're able to really prioritize your time in a manner that's going to be most effective for you, you can ramp your commissions fairly quickly. And so I'm going to talk through a couple examples about our expectations, what you can possibly do to help set yourself up for success. But I would say, take the coaching. First do the job, pick up the phone, make some calls, and then get on Andy's calendar, get on my calendar, pick our brain. I've not been doing this for very long, and quite frankly, it's not my job. It's not my experience. It's not my background. I'm a technology executive. I'm an investor, and I've been learning this job from one of the best. And so, Andy McCall has founded this company, been doing this for 25 years. If you're not taking advantage of his expertise, if you're not, getting on the phone and he'll do it. He'll just talk to you. He'll do a one-on-one with you and tell you everything he knows. He loves this stuff. He enjoys it. And if you just listen and you pick out, those little moments of coaching, say this instead of this, do this in this order instead of what you think is to be best. Go in with an open heart. I always tell people you can't fill a full cup. And so, no matter what you've done in your life, whether it's been sales, whether it's been recruiting, you can always learn more. And if you think you have it all figured out, you probably need to learn more than most. And so come into this, if you have some initiative and you really want to change your life, this is a great way to do it. And you can scale this really fast. All right, so spoiler alert, probably by the title you figured out kind of what I'm going to talk about. So 50 days to change your life. Honestly, I think it should be 30, but I'm being conservative. I know a lot of you have other jobs, other things you're going to be working on. You will stumble and probably want more information than you actually need to be successful. So I'm hedging my bets. I'm going to give you 50 days, and I have the numbers to prove it because I've done it. And so, if you take the coaching, if you leverage our resources, and if you put a concerted effort into it, we will be with you every step of the way. We're going to help you. You're always going to have access to us. I mean, we have standing office hours every day where you get to talk to very senior executives and pick their brain on hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, how do I approach this? And so as you think about what roles we expect you to fill, I've kind of broken them into three different archetypes. And so the first and foremost is the one that says no excuses. It's the fire starter. It's go make something happen. And actually, and you'll see in a second here, that's the easiest. And it's something that you can do right now without even thinking about our platform, our credentials, and you can get started. And again, we'll ride driver's seat while you ride shotgun, and you still get paid. And then we want to see you driving, and we'll ride shotgun, you still get paid. And then you'll be able to take the car out by yourself, and you can make a lot of money doing this. Second one, what I call a fielder. It's just that's an easy one. you're getting pitches or balls hit to you, and so all you're doing is handling inbound requests. I'm going to show you what that looks like, and you will probably have those in the list that I provided you that you can go tackle right now. Again, that's now leveraging the platform and for what it was made for. Third is the fixer, not totally dissimilar from the fielder. But instead of handling just inbound requests and making sure that nothing slips through the cracks, you may have a little work to do. And I love these. I'm going to show you kind of how I've done this, and I've got a couple that I'm doing this with, where you get to be the hero. You get to come in, understand what went wrong, or what could have just been done better. We lead with service, and we want to overserve. And sometimes, that doesn't happen. You have a lot of attrition in this business, and continuity is an art. And being able to hand off a client or an opportunity, artfully, is really important. Not only in this role, but in anything. You don't want to leave people hanging. And this is not a big world. You'd be surprised at how often how you treat people comes full circle. And so, we always say, that you should, care about your personal brand, even if you're not going to be a recruiter for life. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. And so you might see when you log into your platform some examples of this where things could have been handled a little bit better. And that's unfortunate, but it's also an opportunity. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. And so, as I go through this, I give you a couple examples. I'll walk through three, and also include, how to do that work. So take notes, but then obviously we can do some follow-ups and some one-on-ones. So average to, ramp to placement, 35 days from confirmation that, you need to fill a role, to placing those candidates and earning that fee. And so that's not a lot. I mean, a month goes by pretty fast. And so, if you're, looking at this after a week going, oh gosh, I've logged in and I've done some things, but, why aren't I making money? This isn't for you. And so, you are going to get out of this what you put into it. And I've seen people with zero experience, zero sales training, just take to this, so quickly and make so much money. It'll shock you. And really, it's the law of large numbers. I mean, again, as we talked about in one of the other videos, this market is massive. 1 in 3 jobs in the United States is a healthcare job. And so you are competing with a lot of other recruiters. But quite frankly, in this day and age, you're not competing with a lot of great people. Just think about what has happened to society and just the way we treat people and, what you see online. There's a new version of the handwritten note, and it's your personality. It's your charm. And, if you don't have personality or charm, I don't know if I can fix that in a training video. And maybe this isn't for you, but if you have that, you can be a rock star as a recruiter, because these hiring managers are dealing with so many people in this space that don't lead with the kind of care and service that we want to lead with, that we want to train you to lead with, that we want to be part of our culture. And so if you imagine they're getting emails all the time, check out this candidate, do this, do that, give me money, hey, where's this, where's that? And then you come along and you're doing the same thing. How do you stand out? And sometimes that's just being genuine and authentic. Sometimes just being yourself. Everybody wants a script. Don't sound like me. Don't sound like Andy. Take the coaching, but if you don't sound authentic, people can tell. And that's why, Andy and I always talk about AI. AI it's going to be hard to replace the human element to all of this. And that's where you're going to shine. And so if you commit certain amount of time, certain number of days, and you do what we tell you to, it's a volume game. If you make the calls, there are so many people that have open positions that are hiring millions. If you can't reach 1 a month, 2 a month, that's on you. It's not on anybody else. It's not on the training. It's not on the platform. It's just you're not putting forth the effort, and you're not listening to how we want to coach you to stay close to money and make sure that effort is monetizable. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're like, man, I think I'm doing the right things, well, then if you haven't had one-on-ones with Andy, you haven't had one-on-ones with me, you haven't, been to every single training session that we've done, then you're not doing the right things, because that's where you're going to learn. And sometimes it might not even make sense. We might be talking about nonsense sometimes on some of these calls that we have. And sometimes we're talking about problems that other recruiters might have that you're like, well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm doing something else. Sometimes we'll go deep into certifications for a role for somebody else. You're like, well, I'm focusing on physical therapy, and you'll just tune out, and you're missing the underlying point. Understanding what are the qualifications the clients looking for, understanding what are the objections that they're overcoming in what you think is not related to you, but actually you can apply that to something that's related to you. And so you got to have an open heart, and you got to have a hungry mind, and you got to be naturally curious. And if you do those things, you absolutely can start making money in 30 to 60 days, and making serious money. If you talk to Andy, he can probably go back, hundreds of recruiters and people who converted bartenders, and people who sold roofs door to door, and people who sold security systems over the phone, and people who have no sales experience whatsoever. Just said, hey, let me try this. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to receive the coaching, and I'm going to see if I can get good at this. And we've made millionaires. Watched people buy $1 million homes based on the fees they earned recruiting for this organization. And we absolutely want that for you, because if you win, we win. So without further ado, let's talk first about Firestarter, because that's something that you can start right now. And I think you should. And if you haven't received an email from me breaking down exactly what this means, to go out there in your hometown and talk to outpatient clinics just as a way to build your momentum, email me. It's rec@mlr.org. You should have my email by now. If you don't have that, that's crazy. But if you have my email me and say, hey, send me that homework to reach out to clinics in my area that doesn't require all of the credentialing to get into Pulse, all of the things that we're doing, from a training perspective and a coaching perspective. Just very simple homework that you can activate right now. All right. So this first role, this is where I want you to start. If you don't have a background in recruiting or healthcare, anybody can do this. I know, because I did it, and I wasn't a career recruiter. You don't need, don't get wrapped around the axle with, somebody didn't send me my credentials, or I can't log in, or I can't do this, or this isn't how the CRMs I've used in the past worked, or hey, I found a bug, or a million other excuses. Those are just excuses. Don't get in your own way. You don't need any of that. I mean, we didn't use that for 20 years to run this business. Now it's just an accelerator. It's a productivity solution. It's to help you work at scale. Because if you can't do it without that, you're not going to be able to do it with it. And so you don't need our platform to get started. Don't use onboarding or training as an excuse. I'm telling you, all you need is initiative and internet. That's going to light that spark. And so that homework that I sent you, again, if you haven't gotten it, just ask me. I'll email it to you again. You can Google your hometown. And I'm going to show you an example of how I did this. Physical therapy clinics in my hometown. You just don't even have to do physical therapy. You just do therapy clinics, because then you get occupational therapists, speech language pathologists. And the reason why I like people to start with these three roles is because there's just so much business. Now you're not dealing with the bureaucracy of a hospital. You're not dealing with trying to get past, the nurse ratchet that's the gatekeeper that doesn't want to deal with recruiters. And you're not dealing with, I've got to go through legal at some major health system to get a contract in place. There's no excuses. These are usually one layer of bureaucracy, a single decision maker, and you can make this happen right now. We're making it happen right now. I've done it multiple times now, so I know it's not a fluke. When you do this, and I'm gonna go through just a live example of this. You're gonna look for the results, and that's gonna tell you a lot about who you're looking for and why you're looking for them. So I'm going to use Bing here, just because I don't want to open a different browser. And you can skip through this part if you have done the other training video, which I give this example. But let's say physical therapy clinics in Shreveport, Louisiana. So, if I go here and look at this map, I'm basically using this as my lead generation tool. And I use this example all the time because she always shows up right here in the middle, Melanie Massey. And I kind of thought to myself when I first saw this, the first time I did this, a little over a month ago, I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to use this as an example of what not to look for. Melanie Massey, probably a single owner, probably has one location and probably not doing a lot of hiring, right? And so before I made that jump to conclusion error, I happened to glance over here at the bottom of the results. Remember, I told you I want you to look at these results. Now, I like Google results better than Bing results, but we're using Bing. And again, no excuses. You can use any browser. Oh, I got Safari or I got Mozilla. Great, use that. Whatever you got, you can use, and you can be successful with this. So I remember seeing this picture down here. I hovered over it, and the picture jumped up right above her little icon on the map. And I thought, damn, they got swag, and they have 60 people in this. Looks like a high school class photo. I totally misread this one. Great, she's branding it as herself, and so personal brand matters. But she's hiring, and she's going to have turnover, and I'm going to absolutely add her to my list in the system, but also in the back of my mind. Make sure I follow up with this person because if I get if I start fire somewhere else in this town, that's a great lead in as well. Hey, I'm working with other clients in your city. That's helping us get really great talent. We can't. With more talent than we know what to do with. Let's help you out as well. And so, oh yeah, I know that clinic. We'd love to work with you too. I've heard good things. Hopefully, they hear good things. But anyways, so I digress. So I ended up landing on Brewer. Clicked on Brewer. And all I'm really doing is going to the website because I had seen on this map that there was 2 locations. I like that. Multiple locations usually means a bigger organization. This results usually means they're either been around longer, so these search engines have picked up their information over a longer amount of time, or even better, they understand SEO or search engine optimization. So they understand the game. How do I reach people on the internet who may not be looking for me, but maybe looking for someone like me to provide a service or a feature or a product or whatever else they're looking for. So in this case, the top results tend to be a little bit more of a fertile ground to look and try to see if you can't build something. But look, I mean, lead generation, right? There's a lot of this is just physical therapy, a lot of therapy clinics. And I can keep going down pages and pages of results all over this one tiny town in Louisiana. So I went to Brewer. All I'm really doing is going to their website. I want to learn a little bit more about them. And I got hit with this 4 convenient locations. So better than 2. There's actually 2 more over in Bossier. And so, I'm assuming now that they're probably hiring or they're at least thinking about hiring. Again, so many people go into this and they're like, I talked to somebody and they said they're not hiring or they're good. Well, was that the end of the conversation? It shouldn't have been. You should have anecdotes in your back pocket. I would tell somebody, man, that's awesome. That's what we care about. We care about you having a full team. But what we see, especially in healthcare, is a high turnover rate. People leave for spousal reasons. Husband or wife gets a job somewhere else and they got to go, and that's a bummer. People leave for maternity or paternal leave. People leave for kids. People leave because they get a better offer, better compensation, better culture fit, more opportunities for mentorship. People leave all the time for a million reasons. And you can't think about hiring as an acute situation where, oh God, somebody left. Now I got to fix it. Because now you got to build that talent pool. And that's why it costs so much to hire because it takes so much time. And that's not even accounting for the opportunity cost. So, when that person leaves, what are you now having to do, that's extraordinary with your existing staff? Asking them to work longer hours, asking them to cover down, telling your patients you can't see them, they got to get on a wait list because you don't have a therapist. You're not going to replace that person the very next day or the very next week or even that month if you don't have an active, rich pipeline of candidates. And that's what we do on behalf of our clients. We'll manage that. Again, they don't pay for it. They don't pay until they hire somebody. But even if somebody says we're good, hey, if I went to Brewer and they said, you know what, we did have a new location launch, and so we've been hiring for the last 6 months. We're all staffed up. Awesome. I want to be top of mind whenever one of those newly minted PTs ends up leaving or you end up firing one of them for whatever reason. So now let's talk less about filling an open position today and more about your brand, your voice, how we can amplify that across our network, how we can make sure that we're curating a nice candidate pipeline for you so that when you do need it, we're right there ready to go. And we'll do that on our nickel, not yours. So without further ado, I went in here. Now I'm like looking for a career page. I'm really just trying to see like how do they hire, and I usually scroll to the bottom for this little thing down here. The footer, I didn't see like a career page or anything, or join our team, meet our team, went to their leadership team, and that didn't tell me anything other than a couple of the people that I want to reach out to and generate contact details for. But as I was scrolling back up, I did see we're hiring, so I clicked on that. This told me everything I need to know. A bunch of bullets. I can't click on these, so this isn't like they have no applicant tracking system. So you'll hear that term a lot, ATS. So they have no ability for me to click on this and apply. Just like you clicked on a link and applied to us to join us as a recruiter, this company doesn't have something like that, and that tells me they're not as technically advanced as they could be or they should be. And so I'm like, well, they probably have like an email catch-all, but even that's wonky. Request a consultation. That's clearly for a patient. And so I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just, carrier pigeon my interest to be a physical therapist over to Brewer? Like, well, what's happening here? So even without knowing anything else right now, I know that when I talk to the person who actually makes the decisions, that they have a problem with their candidate flow because this is not easy. People will have already given up by now. Like it's too cumbersome. We live in an on-demand generation who wants what they want. They want it right now, and if you don't give it to them exactly how they want it, they'll go find somebody who will. And so I did end up looking around because I don't quit. I did find this little join our team thing, and it's like, okay, well, let me click on that, see what this process looks like. And it's just a generic form. Upload your resume, apply now. So I'm now 3 levels deep in this website. This is what a candidate would have to go through in order to find this, in order to apply with Brewer. And it's just not a quality experience. It's not what candidates, especially the ones you really want to hire, it's not what they expect. And so I know we can help. So I ended up calling in, talking to an office manager. Office managers are your friend. Don't think of them as gatekeepers, even though they gatekeep. See what information you can get from them. I tried to get the owner's information. They were pretty smart about that. They didn't want to give it out. Like, okay, I got you. But they were able to give me somebody who doesn't show up anywhere on here. Shocker. The owner is Brewer, Amanda, and probably her husband, Adam. Could be a brother, but it actually happens to be your husband. Nowhere on here do you see the name Mindy. But by not ending the conversation, I was able to get more information than I otherwise would have been able to glean anywhere else. And that's what I want people to always remember. Like when you're a fire starter, you have to be curious. You have to always have another question. I mean, now you don't want to like belabor a conversation. You don't want to piss somebody off, but you always have to have a next question up. And so when this office manager told me they wouldn't give me the owner's number, but they did, and I was like, hey, let me have her email. And I tell you what, that puts her in charge. I can email her if she wants to get back to me. If she thinks what I have to say is important, she'll get back to me. If she doesn't, she can ignore it, and you're not in trouble. Sure. So she gave me the email address. That could, for most people, I would say 80% of people, that'd be the end of the conversation, right there. Like I did it. I got the owner's information, but I've been around for a while. Owners are busy. I'm an owner. I've been an owner. I understand how hard it is to break through the noise. And so I then asked a very important follow-on question. I said, hey, Jan, working the desk, who doesn't want to be there and is probably thinking about, leaving and getting back to her kids or doing something fun. Who is Amanda's right-hand man or woman? Who does she spend the most time with? Who helps her out? Who do you get emails from in the company? When you're at company events, like who's? I don't see anything in here. All these people, I don't see like an operations person or an admin person. It's just they're all PTs, and physical therapists are busy. They should be seeing patients. Who keeps the train running on time? And she's like, oh, that's Mindy. I'm like, man, Mindy's not even on here. Who's Mindy? Oh, she describes Mindy. Like, well, what's Mindy's email address? Oh, yeah, okay. So the same exact structure. That's another, hack. If you get an email address for one person and it's like first initial last name or first name dot last name, chances are everybody in their company is going to have the same structure if they're organized, and most of these, organizations are. And so got the email, And then real quick after that, and what's her number? And she just rattled it off. And I don't know if she forgot that she had previously told me she didn't want to give away the number of Amanda, but she might have just thought, well, Mindy's not Amanda, and she's kind of staff, and so I don't mind giving it away. But either way, she gave it to me. So it took me 5 minutes to find Brewer in a search. It took me another 5, 6 minutes on a call with an office manager at the Shreveport location to get 2 emails, one phone number, and now I can get to work. And I could have kept going. I could have, I got other things to do. So y'all can get contact information for all of these people. Each one of these people could be a contact. They could all be candidates. So again, every client could be a candidate. Every could lead to a candidate. Every candidate could lead to a client, and vice versa. So there's always questions to be asked, work to be done. If I had time, I could go to each one of these and connect with them on LinkedIn. I could, have gotten email addresses, phone numbers, and reach out to them. How do you like working there? I get more information. And somebody goes, "Hey, I'm actually moving to Iowa. I'm looking for physical therapy jobs in Iowa." Cool, money, money on the table right there. So let me help you. So there's always conversations we had. Be curious, do the detective work, and so then once we, did all this, contacted Mindy. Sure enough, Amanda didn't get back to me. Didn't reply to the email. Didn't reply to my, but Mindy didn't reply to my email either. But I called her, left a voicemail. She called me back, and then we set up a call. And sure enough, they needed 5 physical therapists, and that started a relationship. I said, okay, great. We're going to get you those physical therapists. First, we got to get a contract in place. It's very simple, one pager. It's a contingency fee agreement, so you don't pay us until we deliver a candidate that you want to hire. And typically, our contracts, and again, if you saw the other training, you would have seen this. They typically have kind of 3 parts, but the second part isn't relevant to you because it's actually very ideal for a contract. First part is the fee. So, we usually get a third, especially when we're dealing with these large hospitals. Um, Senior recruiters, or with our authorization, we can slip that down to, say 25% or 20%, but it would have to be for a strategic reason. In this case, there was a strategic reason. And so we gave them a sweetheart deal. We were at 20%. Term is the second, structure inside of the contract, second section, and it's evergreen, which is really cool. So you don't have to go back and renew it. You don't have to ask for anything else. It just, once we have contracts in place and you go into our platform and you look at all these things that are contracted, they're evergreen contracts. So we might have a contract that was signed in 2015. It's still executable. So we can still contact that organization, even if we haven't talked to them in a few years, and say, hey, we're contracted with you to provide you quality candidates, which is really awesome because a hiring manager doesn't want to deal with legal any more than we do. And so if they already know that you're contracted, cool, start sending me candidates. And then the third piece is the guarantee period. And the guarantee period is just saying, look, we're going to underwrite our candidates. We want them to be a member of your team that's going to stick around. So when we say we specialize in permanent placement, that's what I'm talking about. We want somebody who's going to be a part of your team, and they're not going to just chase the next shiny thing. And if they do, or you terminate them for cause within that first, guarantee period window, then we're going to replace them, and you're not going to pay more for that. And so we don't refund money. Make sure, and you can't, you'll hear Andy say, don't say something you can't take back. But also just don't say something that makes you sound stupid or overpromise something, because then it breaks your, it really degrades your credibility. And so when we say guarantee period, really quickly, because this is how it worked with Brewer. So 180 days means if you pay us $20,000 for a candidate, because you were going to pay them $100,000 in their first year gross earnings, bonus, salary, everything else. So we got a 20% fee, $20,000. That's for that 180-day guarantee period, kind of prorated across that timeline. So if they leave halfway into it, say after 90 days, then we've only earned half that fee technically, even though we think we've earned all of it. But again, this helps us differentiate ourselves. It helps us put our money where our mouth is, and clients like that. So after that 90 days, if somebody leaves, we're going to replace that candidate for the same position, same schedule. So it's got to be equal. But when we replace that candidate, let's say you pay them $100,000, you're only going to pay us half of the fee because you had half credit, so $10,000. So in the span of that 180 days, let's say we placed 2 candidates. Technically, we should have gotten $40,000 for 2 candidates, but because one of them was a replacement, we only got $30,000. So anyway, that's how our contracts work. But again, it's one page, super easy, and you don't have to do this. You can ride shotgun with us while Andy or myself does this. So all you need to do is get somebody to say, yes, I'm interested in help, and then we'll set up the call. And some people don't even want the call. And again, if you get the deal you want, just say deal. If we have somebody who's interested and they're just like, look, I don't need a meeting, send me the contract. Cool. Send me or a representative that we tell you about. Right now it's Melissa, point of contact. You send them a name, an email, who's to go on the signature block, and then we'll send that contract out right away. But typically we do want to have that touch point. We want to have multiple touch points with our clients. They like that love. They love that service, and so we want to be able to get on a phone with them and talk to them about what differentiates us and give them access to the founder, the senior leadership team, and that'll help build a lot of trust right out of the gate because we've been doing this for so long, and we have the credibility in the industry, and we speak like they expect to be spoken to. So, and and that's the best way for you to learn. You'll be able to see how we do that, hear how we do that, hear how we overcome some objections. So, really, we want you to set meetings and just get interest. So you're out there bird dogging interest. And again, in this case, you're a fire starter. So you're creating interest with an organization we don't even know about. And that's what I did with Brewer here. And so once let's see what that looks like once we kind of have them in the system, and then we'll go on to the next one, Fielder. All right. So as a reminder, before I show you kind of what I did, now that we had Brewer on the hook, use Google search your hometown, check out the top results. I like multiple locations, but anybody in this top results are probably hiring. Kind of review how they hire. Try to get a sense of how technologically advanced they are, what systems they might be using, identify pain points. But again, this is not a day of research. This is like I'm doing this while I'm calling them. I'm just kind of clicking on stuff so I'm ready for the call. Because again, the best way to train is to do this job, and so don't have analysis paralysis. Just get out there, pick up the phone, make the call. Get a hiring manager's contact information or talk to the hiring manager, hopefully in that first call, and figure out if they need help with candidate flow. And how do we get them some of our quality and qualified candidates, pre-screened candidates, in front of them for consideration. They already have told you their tell. They already have a career page up, or they've told you they're hiring. So they have a pain point. They have a need for more team members. We have potential team members. Let's do a deal. And so, again, you don't have to close them. Just set a meeting. Hey, a member of my senior leadership team asked me to reach out to you. This is an important region for us. We're spending a lot of resources in the area to curate a really robust talent pool. I would love to set up a call with you and our leadership team to kind of talk about your needs, your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations. And I'm not going to ask them, are you interested? I'm going to say, what's your availability? What's your availability this week? Let's be prescriptive. Let's just jump past all the back and forth of like, just when are you available? Because I'm already assuming you want this call because you took my call and you have all these open positions and we have amazing candidates. So what's your availability this week? Let's get this done. Let's have a sense of urgency because this is important. And then we're going to talk now about Brewer specifically. But I'll give you a spoiler alert, and you probably saw it before. It's 28 days from that search to placing a physical therapist and generating a fee, and that's a low fee, because we gave them a deal. So 20% versus 33%. You can imagine this would have been a lot higher if it was at 33%. But we're building a relationship in an area. They had multiple physical therapist needs. And this actually led to a referral to a new client. So again, every conversation can also lead to a referral. So every conversation, hey, I'm so glad we were able to connect. I'm so glad, you're happy with the service that we either provided or are going to provide. Who else do you know in your area that we could help out? And it's not necessarily, maybe they don't want to help out their competitors, but it could be a friend or a colleague in another city. That's another lead. It could just be an entirely different organization. And so it's not competitive. Maybe they're a physical therapy clinic, but they also know somebody who does a lot of occupational therapy. So it's not cannibalizing their candidate flow. You never know if you don't ask. So we want you to ask. So, I went in here and, first, we're creating an organization. So this big blue button and then so now you're in the system. You should have already listened to the platform training. So even though I'm telling you, Firestarter, you can do all that work to get somebody on the hook without accessing our platform. And even when you access our platform, this is very simple. This is just kind of, keeping track so you stay organized. But even if you couldn't access our system, if you found a clinic that was interested, I'll do all that work for you. I'll put it into the system for you. You still get paid as if you did it. But, that's not an excuse. So plus organization, super simple. I do not have to train you on this. Name, address, email or phone number. It's already assigned to me, so it defaults to that. I'm going to put the website in there. I'm also going to put their career page in there. Industry is a drop down, so you really can't get it wrong. I would probably put therapy. Specialty, if it is available, there might be something in here you could put, but again, it's still just therapy. I might want to denote it as a specialty clinic if it does certain cases or something. But again, you just scroll down there and figure out what you want. And if you don't like what you want, just type in suggest another option. Is a AI enabled next gen therapy clinic, whatever you want. So again, no excuses. You can always, if you don't find what you like in here, do other and type in another option. All of this is optional details after this. Again, it's a database. So if you're really good and you're a full desk recruiter, you'll begin filling this stuff out as well. But you don't have to. Name, address, phone number, email, industry. If you can't do that, probably can't do this job. So once it's in there, and again, when you see your lists look like this. This is where organizations will go. So once I created Brewer, it showed up here. I can go back to it anytime I want, just click on it and have this little slide out. And again, you see how it kind of took a second to load? That will happen. This is a massive database with millions of records. So if you have a call or an email and then you go, well, I went back into the system and it's not there, be patient. You should be on your next call. Don't worry about it. It's in there. The system is tracking everything. And so activities will update over time. And so as you scroll through here, see how these kind of it doesn't show an email? It's there. It's pulling it right now. And so it takes a second for it to load, but now you can start seeing a lot of this email traffic. And so you just keep scrolling. Don't worry about it. Just keep scrolling. And as you scroll down, it realizes that you want more information. So it'll start populating that information. We don't want all the data to live in your browser because it would kill your computer. So we have to call the database for this information as we go, as we see what our users want to see. And so again, as I'm scrolling through here, again, I can see all this activity tied to Brewer. And if it goes all the way back to when we started the conversation, there'll be nothing because it'll show me in the system creating this organization, this opportunity right out of the gate. And I'm not going to go through this because you've already done platform training, or you can watch that video and talk about all of this stuff. But once it's in there, I start talking about doing the work. I start actually creating a job order for this actual role. So that's this plus requisition tab, and so I would create a job order for this. So this is the ad, like what you saw online to apply to us. This is how I created that. And so it's also very simple. Job title, the title record is just the actual formal title. So the job title is what you would see in the ad. This is an experienced ultrasound technologist. But then I would go into the Title A record and I would actually type in, ultrasound. And this is how our database has it stored, ultrasound tech. This isn't a very interesting title, so I wouldn't want that to be my job title. The job title is what we show externally. This is how we track it internally. And so again, you just use the search button to figure out what you want to do, create that. Indeed sponsored, just yes or no. This means, are we promoting it heavily on Indeed? If it's a really high-paying opportunity, it's a really there's a lot of sense of urgency, we would probably say yes. Again, you can just confirm with me or somebody here, a senior recruiter, whether or not you should sponsor yours or not. The rest is self-explanatory. Salary range. We don't like doing this salary range of just all zeros. You kind of want to put some specificity in there. And so it doesn't have to be exact, but, you can Google it. What is the average salary range for this position? Click in these things. I would have changed this. Let's say it was 80. I would change this to that. So it just kind of looks a little bit more unique and specific. That's just do it. Trust me. Same thing here. Maybe it's 115 to 1. Again, you can't get it wrong because I'm just making it up. It's close. It's probably a little bit on the high side from what the salary would reflect on if a Google search, but then I'm making the number very specific. Can't get it wrong. Ad organization. This is always going to be, for at least for you for now, it's always going to be MLR. So it's what you just type in MLR into the search. Oops. MLR into the search, and then again, this is a massive database, and so whenever we do this, it might take a second to show up. Be patient. Now it shows up. I click on MLR. Ad location will be where that is shown. So, a lot of times we don't actually put the ad in the city that the client is already in because we have other ways to get candidates in those cities. So we might put it in a nearby city. Like I'm in Austin right now. I might place my ad, even though I'm searching for a client in Austin, I might place my ad just north of Austin in, like, say, Georgetown or Round Rock. Somewhere where they might not necessarily know about the opportunity in Austin, but they're still within a commutable distance. We think a commutable distance is about 30 miles. And so the ad location, again, we make it easy on you. You just type in, where you want to place the ad. And then, you click on this. Make sure you click on this. And then that will populate the zip code. Just this is always defaults to no. Don't worry about that for right now. Defaults to no. The target organization is who we're actually recruiting for. And so when we did this, this is external for us. So Brewer Physical Therapy, I would put this in here. And then I would, go through here and just fill out the rest of this. Most of this is optional. And so it's just a way for us to track and search our requisitions. But that's pretty easy. You can create this with just these required fields. You put in a job description. And the cool thing is you don't have to learn how to do this job description. You can actually go into, as you remember, this little crown is requisitions, and you can go into old requisitions and duplicate them so that you don't have to, start from scratch. And that's really helpful because, we know it's like, whoa, I don't want to write the wrong thing. And really, you can't write the wrong thing with this stuff. It's really pretty simple. But let's say I was doing a physical, let's go find one of the ones that I actually, did for Brewer. And again, whenever you see this little it's pulling this out. So placed this job title, this is the job rec that we were just looking at. So I can click on this, open this up, and see all those same fields that we created. And I can edit them. This is where I would go in and edit that if for some reason I wanted to change it for whatever reason. Let's say instead of a PT, they wanted a DPT, which I'm not going to get into that right now, but I would just change this to DPT, but I'm not going to do that right now. And so this is how I can edit that role and see kind of, what's going on. But this is the job description. And so it's a pretty robust job description. It talks a lot about the area, the qualifications, and we lean into this. You see this nestled along the Red River in Northwest Louisiana, this soulful city blends Southern charm with vibrant culture. So we're not saying, hey, come work at Brewer, because we want this to also catch candidates that maybe aren't interested in Brewer, but are interested in the area. And so we'll say near this city. We'll talk about the region, not the specific facility and not the specific city, so that our ad can be used to the max benefit of our candidate pool and possibly our other clients. And so I'm talking, kind of in a more regional way about what this is, with the cost of living well below the national average, And so you can just copy these with this little button, this little duplicate button, and then change it for your city, and then change the salary for that specific city, then update the title, and good to go. But again, you don't need to do any of this right now because we'll do it for you. If you have somebody interested, you'll unlock more training, and then we'll walk through this very specifically, and we'll create this together, and then you'll learn how to do it that way. But you don't need to learn how to create a requisition if you can't get a hiring manager to tell you they need your help to fill an open position. You're putting the cart before the horse. So for right now, you're just trying to find interest, but this is what we'll do together once you're able to get that interest. And so once that happened, then I use the platform for what it's meant for. I put feelers out into the world, people actively seeking in the job market, and then people actively looking at would they consider a career change? And so I should say passively would consider a career change. So if they're in the job market, they'll show up here in my inbox. This one I already placed, and so I've got to work and get some more candidate flow here. But we did screen some people. Some people were out of process for a variety of reasons. We ended up placing her. And then I've kind of moved my focus more to Shreveport outside of Bossier City because Bossier's smaller. So I've been focusing on my candidate flow somewhere else. But if I find somebody in our database, I'll just add them. I'll add their email address and I'll add them to my pipeline, and then I'll work them through this pipeline. If they actually apply to a job, they'll just show up in inbox automatically. And then again, all these contact cards, as I showed you before, I'm just moving them back and forth from place to place to kind of keep myself honest and organized. So again, from start to finish, that Google search, from searching this map to placing this candidate is 28 days. And so 28 days from an unknown organization to a $15,000 fee that should have been higher. And that's something you could do right now without even logging into Pulse. You could do this entire workflow right now. So don't make any excuses. This is something you can do in your hometown. And this is what we want from you. This is what indicates a great recruiter. Can you be a fire starter? That's why I started with this. I'm going to talk about two more roles here in a second, being a fielder and a fixer, but fire starters are what we want. We will recruit you to join us full time with a base and benefits and be a part of this if you can do this. So do this right now. All you got to do is get somebody who's interested, and then you'll unlock additional training. So don't ask for all this candidate training and all this how do I interview prep and how I do it. If you can't do this, you're never going to be able to do that. And if you can't do it in your own hometown with zero bureaucracy with a therapy clinic, then you're not going to have any luck with a hospital. So please start here, be a fire starter, and we will make sure you're successful. All right, next up is fielder. This is the easiest thing to do. So I want you to be a fire starter first, but fielding, like it sounds, is easy. And we're going to end with what may be a little bit harder, which may be the hardest, but actually is the most fun, fixer. So fielder, once you do have access to our platform, you hear me talk about, don't get lost in the platform, don't analyze everything, don't try to figure out where all the bugs are and why doesn't this work the way I expect it to work. All I want you to do is go to activities. Look at the activities first for your organization and review the history. And I guarantee you, most of you will find opportunities to make money. And again, I know because I did it. Log into the platform, go to your list, review the email history that's in activities, and you're just looking for context. You're looking for, email conversations in the past that sound like somebody was looking for help, and for whatever reason, that help wasn't delivered. Or they were just asking for a position to be filled. A lot of these times, if they're contracts and we've worked with them in the past, they'll just send an email to the last person they worked with, like, hey, now we need help with a respiratory therapist. Now we need help with a medical lab scientist. And then if they send an email to a person who's no longer here, it might just be languishing in their inbox somewhere. And damn, because they didn't do what I talked about in the beginning, because they didn't have a good handoff, because they didn't have professional pride in making sure their clients were taken care of, because there was no continuity, that client, their request just sat there in their inbox. And they don't care, right? They're talking to probably tens, if not hundreds of other recruiters. So they sent the same message to a bunch of other agencies, and they're probably working on that. But they don't have access to the resources that we have. They don't have the expertise that we have. They don't have the experience we have. So even if they 3 months ago sent a note to 20 different recruiters saying, hey, I need help filling a medical lab scientist position, and you stumble into it 3 months later and you're like, oh man, we missed that. It's probably still open right now, because a lot of recruiters aren't as good as we are, quite frankly. They don't have access to the candidate pool that we have. They don't have access to the tools that we have. They don't have access to a platform like we built. And so you can absolutely use that as your icebreaker. Like, hey, it's me. I work at, MLR. You may remember us as Emily Healthcare. Before that, we were McCall and Lee. We've recently done a rebrand to MLR because we've been able to launch this incredible new platform that helps us source and qualify amazing candidates. I know that you had been speaking with one of our colleagues who's actually, unfortunately, no longer with us. They're pursuing other opportunities. And this may have slipped through the cracks, but I'm on it. I just want to see if there's anything that has changed. Have you filled the role? And if you haven't, I'll make sure that I get you, some really qualified candidates to consider. And you're just, again, now you're building rapport, you're building a relationship. And if they still have the open position, they're not going to care. They're like, yeah, I still need that position filled. And you ask them anything else we should be looking at. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, I also need MRI techs, or they might say no. They want to see if we can fill one before they'll give us more, and that's happened before. And so we'll just kind of see, where that goes. And I'll talk about that actually with the next example in the fixer. But, once you have them, saying, hey, yeah, we still need help, there's still an opportunity to set that meeting. I still want you to try to set a meeting. And so, yeah, we're on that. We're gonna get you some really quality candidates right away. But while I have you, what's your availability this week? My CEO asked me to reach out and set up a meeting. One, because it's just important to us to have relationships with all of our clients. And two, this happens to be actually an important region for us, and we're testing some really exciting new things with our technology platform. If you're interested or you're curious, and we can even show you behind the curtain, what the Wizard of Oz is doing back there. And so you kind of, sometimes they're always interested. HR folks, talent acquisition folks, recruiters, like, oh, what tools are they using? And we have a reason why we want to tease that. And so all you got to do is kind of leave that little breadcrumb, like, we'll do a little show and tell, introduce you to a very senior executive. We'll try to improve and build upon the relationship we've already built. And again, that just gives us more touch points, more opportunities for service, and less opportunities for things to slip through the cracks. If multiple people are talking to a client or have their email or have communicated with them, it's much less likely that the next time they have a request for information or a request to help us have us help them fill a position, it's much less likely that we're going to miss that. So we want to always lead with interest and meetings wherever possible. So without further ado, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Northwestern medicine. Before we were talking about, hey, start fire in your own hometown, small clinics, no bureaucracy. Now we're doing a 180. Northwestern medicine, it's an 11 hospital system, 2,000 beds. It's in Illinois, and we're gonna focus on Valley West Hospital here. And spoiler alert, 50 days from a search request to a $17,000 fee for a medical lab scientist, and he was part-time. And so even part-time positions can be lucrative and add up for some of these positions that we focus on. Remember from that other training I was showing you, these high-demand jobs are also higher-paying jobs. And so a percentage of their salary is more, which means you make more on your commission, which is what we want. So high demand, usually, higher earners. And let's see what that looks like. So as you remember, and you're going through, your own lists and your own orgs, this is that clinics list that we're talking about with Brewer, but you'll see this in your other lists. And so you'll be able to see hospital systems and hospitals that we're contracted with and things that we want to, go after. I happen to be looking around Illinois, and really what I was doing was looking at other people's lists and seeing this user field right here. I was looking for a couple things. And this is how I use the database, not as a power user, because I'm new to all this. I'm a tech guy, but I'm new to even this technology as we're building it, because everybody's new, because it's new. And so how can I use this to do my job? And so I'm looking at users, and I know this, and you could always ask me, so you would know it too, but I know who's still here and who's not. And so I like looking through here and seeing like where somebody maybe is no longer here. Do we have a contract with them? And then over here, right off the almost edge of my screen, and it's a little bit too far over here, so I'm going to grab these little dots right here, and I'm going to move it so I can see it. See? Now I can move it over here. You can customize this for yourself. It's a database. So now I'm looking at the organization. I'm going to look at the last activity date. I'm going to look at the user. And you know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to look at last contacted too. So I'm kind of trying to triangulate some stuff. Some of this is the same. The last activity date might be the last contacted date, but not always. There might be activity, see Northwestern medicine here, but the contact date is different. And so there's some interesting things. I want to look into that. But let's go to Northwestern medicine, Valley West. And I just happened to fall on this. It used to be owned by this guy Truitt. And when I came upon it, there was like a delay in activity, and I know this person's no longer here. So I was like worried that, okay, maybe, something had happened with this. I want to see if this contract is still good, if they're still happy with us, et cetera, because, I knew this system from a prior life. And so I wanted to look into it. So as I scroll down here and I get to kind of dig around here, I saw this. Literally, what was that? 5 seconds of scrolling. So I'm just kind of looking through here, and I got to, let's see, where was it? Oh, I went too far. So it's even easier. So May 2025. Hi, my name is Jill Miller. I'm a laboratory manager at Northwestern Medicine Valley West. I previously worked with, and see, it said this is a transcript, so I can listen to the call recording and hear what it actually says. But what she's saying is M. Lee Healthcare, which is what we used to be called, M. Lee, Lee, Healthcare. So I have previously worked with M. Lee Healthcare to recruit medical lab scientists. We had a really good relationship, and then I haven't heard anything since. It sounds like there may have been some sort of merge in your company. We had sent out notices about our rebrand. She's a lab manager. She doesn't know about that. I'm looking to recruit part-time medical lab scientists, employee at Sandwich. Sandwich is a city in Illinois. Give me a call. So now I'm fielding a request. This was an old contact. We had it stored in our database as Steve Leashed, who probably doesn't work there anymore. The person who owns that job now is Jill Miller. So we need to go back in and update that. And then he was calling in to this guy, AR, who also doesn't work here anymore. So it was just languishing in this inbox somewhere. And so I picked it up, made a call, talked to her about what she needed, said she still needed it, and we got to work. And that was it. Same thing. Added an opportunity. And then, I'm going to show you this because, see these two right here, Aurora and Joliet? That's what I was talking about before, where I said if I put in Sandwich, Illinois, I can already tell you Sandwich, Illinois is a tiny little town. And that's okay. We focus, it's a major system around the Chicago area, but it's a tiny little town. So if I click on this and I go over to this tiny little town, I don't want to put a requisition in Sandwich, Illinois. It's probably only one hospital in Sandwich, Illinois. Yep, there it is. And so they're already getting those candidates. I want to find other candidates. Plano looks just as small, if not smaller. So I'm going to keep scrolling out. Aha. Aora, that looks bigger. Joliet, that's bigger. I could probably do Chicago. I mean, this is, a lot of people that work in Chicago or, claim Chicago, they might live in Naperville or outside of Chicago. But either way, now I'm talking, this is a good search. Now, do I want to go all the way over here to Davenport? Probably not. But I'm going to put an ad for a medical lab scientist part-time in Aurora, and I'm going to put one in Joliet. And I'm going to try to see who's interested in this area that might be willing to work in this area. And that's why you saw this right here. So from the time I talked to Jill, fielded this request, placed these two ads, look how many people in this pipeline. Almost 50, give or take, in both pipelines. And so we got to work. And if you look at this pipeline, went through, as it loads, a lot of people. It's out of process. This is now me doing the work as a recruiter, screening these people. A lot of people aren't qualified for whatever reason. Some people are turned down by the hospital for certain reasons. I presented this person, and for whatever reason, they said no. And sometimes they'll give you the information on why they say no. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes, the person's really viable, but they're not interested. You'll catch people who, are in Aora and they sure as hell don't want to work in Sandwich, and that's okay. Again, that's part of that candidate training that we're going to give you once we get to this point where we can walk through how do we screen these people so that we're not just throwing them over the fence to the client. We're giving them people who they are most likely going to hire. And, spoiler alert, they ended up hiring Lamont. Loved him. He did a great job. I coached him all the way through, and he got placed, and everybody's happy. So 50 days from Jill saying to somebody who used to work here, who no longer works here, hey, we need some help, to me going, hey, you still need that help? Yes, I got you. And then, being able to place him. And it took a little bit longer because Sandwich is in the middle of nowhere. And, it wasn't like, it was important and it was urgent, but they wanted to get the right hire. And so we went through a couple, presented candidates, and they reviewed it. And so there's a lot of reasons why, sometimes they'll say they're open to, sponsoring somebody that would need like an H-1B visa or a TN visa. You'll hear that term a lot. That's people that live in Mexican and Canadian citizens who work here. And some organizations just don't want to deal with it. They're like, you know what, bring me a U.S. citizen. And so you got to work through that and figure out, what they're looking for. Do they have the right certifications? And then, that takes some time. And you want to call references. You want to, make sure that, you get ahead of things. And so But even part-time positions can be lucrative. So again, this is fielding something. But again, I'm using our platform to figure out what got missed. And there are things in your list right now that got missed. There are contacts and orgs. And so again, you have this list of orgs, but within every single org, you have a list of contacts. And for some of these hospitals, the contact list is long. And so, if you think about, going into these major hospitals, and we've been working with them for a long time. I mean, look at here, all these contacts here. I mean, all of those, and we want you to cleanse the database as you go. If you go, don't be the I gotcha guy or gal. Like, I just contacted that contact, and they haven't worked there in 5 years. So what? Who works there now? Who do they have listed now? Update the contact, change the name, change the email, delete that. Tell me to delete that contact if you don't have permissions to delete the contact. Like, that's the point. Do the job. We're trying to get better data, better opportunities, better conversations. This is not about trying to be a hero. It's not about, trying to, throw stones or cast aspersions or be a devil's advocate. Look for solutions. If you're driving around a parking lot, are you looking for cars or are you looking for open spots? You'd be surprised at how many human beings in their day-to-day lives look for cars. And they're just always pissed about something not working. Something's not happening for them. Somebody's not giving them something. Something was too hard. Look for open spots. Look for places to park. Look for solutions and be that solution. And I guarantee you, you'll be successful at this or anything else you do. So next, we're going to go to exactly what I'm talking about. How do you fix problems? How do you be a fixer? So we were a fire starter, we're a fielder, or you could be a fixer. And all of these can happen in the first 30 to 60 days. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the fixer. So, again, just like the fielder, you have access to our platform. You'll see a lot of this is exactly the same. You leverage activities. You want to review history, and you want to find organizations who are not happy with us. And you want to rehabilitate that relationship. And it can be a lot of different reasons. Maybe something slipped through the cracks. Maybe we placed a candidate, that candidate left. Now they feel salty about it. Who knows why? But again, that's the power of having all that communication in one place. Is you can kind of dig into there and see what was the nature of the unhappiness. Where did the service go wrong? And then you can start to formulate a plan on how to rehabilitate that relationship, how to fix it. And I love this stuff. The very best recruiters are not only fire starters, again, the fielding is easy, but they're fixers. And they're looking for solutions. Again, they're not looking for cars, they're looking for empty spots to park a car because they're already driving a car. And now they want to figure out how to get something done and go get to work. And that's what we want you to be thinking about. And so let me show you again how I'll do this. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about Greenwich Hospital. It's a part of the Yale New Haven Health system in Connecticut. 5 hospital system, nearly 3,000 beds. So massive. So a lot of bureaucracy. And the reason why, sometimes the bureaucracy seems daunting, but also it's kind of exciting because you know how many people they hire for those 3,000 beds? And so if we can rehabilitate a relationship, if we can make them happy and we can give them service and they feel good about us, sky's the limit. I think I've told you in the other training, we had a guy, he's from England, who just caught a cold engagement and did well on the first placement, and that turned into like 30, 30 placements right after that in very short order for an entire department. And I think it was billed like almost $500,000 in a month. That's an outlier, but it can happen. That's crazy. And so if you are very, you know, very confident, but also very, humble in how you build these relationships, and they have a good feeling about you and they want to work with you. There is nothing you can't do. You could build your entire desk around one single system. Now, we don't want you to do that. There's multiple Yale New Havens. Dallas, Texas doesn't even know who Yale New Haven is, nor do they care. And they have massive systems in Dallas, Texas. And there's massive systems in even smaller cities. And so these bigger systems are very juicy. But Greenwich Hospital is just one small hospital in that system. And And so, they have their own bureaucracy even within Greenwich as a part of the system. So, and I'm going to tell you where that can kind of make things a little bit interesting, but also sometimes more confusing. But again, 28 days from a stalled search, asking us to help them with something, that not going anywhere, them not feeling great about it, to placing a stenographer and a $22,000 fee. We also had a replacement credit that we owed them, so they were probably salty about that as well. We had placed a candidate. That candidate had left pretty quickly, so they had a big credit, and so we were able to clear that credit, rehabilitate the relationship, and now we're back in action, and we're actually searching for some MRI techs. So let's talk about this. So again, you're going through your list. I'll just keep using this PT clinics, but in this case, I was looking at hospitals up in the New York, Connecticut area. I landed on Greenwich Hospital. Now, I had landed on Greenwich Hospital because somebody had left, and there was a rep here that won't will go unnamed to protect the maybe not so innocent, but we'll protect him anyways. And I knew that he was struggling. He was working some stuff, and I remember him saying something about this hospital, and it felt like he was maybe busy, and maybe even productive, but not effective. He didn't place anybody, and I wanted to kind of understand more about why. And I'm gonna skip to his requisitions because I want to make a clear point. You know how I was showing you in the last one how it had ads in Aora and it had ads in Juliet, and those are both within a pretty commutable distance to Sandwich, Illinois. Now, this person who was working this deal, and I'll show you how I found out about it in a second, but he was placing these ads, and one of the ads he was placing that he was focusing all his time on was Farmingdale, New York. And I don't know who told him to do that, or if he just did it on his own. Probably did it on his own. But I know a little thing about New York. I went to West Point. I got a lot of friends in New York. I used to split time between here and Brooklyn, so I know New York. And I can already tell you this is a bad idea. One, I want to make sure that there's no. I would want to make sure that there's no state licensure issues between New York and Connecticut. Do you have any specific licensures that you are required by Connecticut? Is there reciprocity? Because now I'm dealing with a different state. It's close, in terms of border, but I actually know Farmingdale is on Long Island, and if I go to this actual job post, he's got 37 people in it. He was doing work every day. He was talking to candidates and he was trying to find the right fit. But if I go here, and the reason why I told you I liked this map view, check this out. Look at this. All of these candidates, all up and down Long Island. This, you know, Zoriana to this is where the role is up in Connecticut. That's a 2 hour drive. There's no way that candidate's going to take that job. And so, you'll probably go in here, see, oh, look, here we go. I didn't even prep this. Bible not interested, Bible not interested, Bible not interested, Bible not interested, Bible not interested. Just wasting time. Like, no, they're not gonna take this job. Now, because of this map, I might focus on Lisa. I might focus on Eliana. They might. That's actually not that bad of a distance. But it's still, oh, well, as I zoom in, I probably spoke too soon. Going up I-95 to get to this role, might take a minute. And so again, you want to understand, what's a good search. But I'm putting the cart before the horse. Again, we're going to fix this, but how did I find this? And so as I was looking at it through Greenwich, and remember I told you go to activity. So you would expect to see, some sort of scrolling down, scrolling down. When did this all start? Well, now I'm already in 2024. What's that all about? And then see here, I'm kind of jumping between July 2025 and this September 2024. And this doesn't make any sense to me. And I know it because I did it. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand this. Like, I know who this person is. She's in charge of HR. And I'm submitting candidates to her and the therapy, not the therapy, but the department manager, a gentleman named David. And so I'm like, where's the rest of the activities here? If I was just on Greenwich, I would have just, I would have been like, all right, moving on to the next. I guess there's nothing here for me. But I'm using the system the way I was coached to use the system, the way I was taught myself to use the system. I'm going through all of these contacts. I'm trying to figure out who I can reach out to, who I can email, who I can call. There's 3 pages of contacts at Greenwich Hospital alone. And so I'm digging through here, and I'll spoiler alert, 'cause I don't want to keep you on this all day long. I found that there was a mistake, and the way I found it was the person who was running this deal had saved the contact wrong, and so he had saved it as this one, David Passaretti. And so when I went to David Passaretti and I linked in him because I want to LinkedIn everybody. And I was like, plastic and reconstructive surgery, like, what does that have to do with being a sonographer? And so a little bit of digging, and I realized that he had just mistakenly selected David Passaretti when he was really trying to select David Cefarelli. And David Cefarelli, it gets worse. David Cefarelli, because he never was tracking him as a contact, never had an organization. And I left this like this as a mistake because I like talking to this. But David Cefarelli, who is actually the hiring manager, doesn't show up anywhere in here because the database isn't perfect. And this rep certainly was not perfect. So not only did he make a mistake and think it was David Passaretti, but he didn't know that it was David Cefarelli or didn't realize that he had made that mistake. And he never clicked select organization and updated this to be Greenwich Hospital. So there was no way for the system to know that Greenwich Hospital's actual decision maker for the sonography position, because it's no longer it's not a contact here. So that activities for him doesn't show up here because the contact's got to be here for the activities to show up here. And so I ended up finding outside of the system. I found it on LinkedIn that who I really needed was David Cefarelli. And so now we're in business. Now I have activity tied to David Cefarelli. And oh, looky here. There were people talking to David Cefarelli. It just got mislabeled. And so I could go back in here and find out that, sure enough, these people work, multiple people. I see multiple people working this. Kenny, Lester, Tyler, all these people working this. And this was back in April. And so I reached out to him in June and said, hey, what gives? What's changed? Did you guys fill that position? No. Not only have we not filled the position, you guys still owe us a credit. You know, Basically, they think that we suck at our job. I'm a fixer. I'm going to fix this. So I got you. I'm on it. So going back to this requisitions tab, so I created requisitions in Connecticut, not New York, Yonkers, Farmingdale. I don't know why this rep was creating these records so far away when you should have been in Connecticut. And sure enough, this is what we did. Created a whole new, fresh candidate pipeline. And there's some people in here, and I'm still having the same problem, out of process. Um, Sometimes they're turned down. Look at all these turned down. I presented these people, they got turned down. And sometimes that's because they don't have the right certifications, and you're learning about the client. In this particular case, sonographer, a lot of people have OBGYN experience. They actually wanted abdomen and vascular experience, which is actually a pretty cool thing about our system. And so if I'm going into, like this person right here, again, instead of digging through their resume trying to figure out if this guy's got abdomen or vascular experience, I can actually do this AI summary, and I can see here, look, ARDMS in general abdomen and vascular tech. Now, this person scored really, really well. And if you remember from the training, these little scores, he had a 90. So he beat everybody. And I got to update this now because I got him interviewed, and he didn't do that great on the interview. And that's the same. But Catherine over here, who had one of the lowest scores, she killed her interview, killed her on site, and they hired her. And so this is the one we're talking about today. So we went from trying to figure out why we weren't getting good candidate flow because we were putting ads in the wrong places that were not in a commutable distance to Connecticut. So all we were going to rely on was relocatable people. But who wants to relocate from Long Island to Connecticut? That's a very small population. They already live in the area. And so I created an actual rec that would be something that we could get the right candidates. I also went into our system, created a new list for myself of candidates with that experience. So I would go into here, and again, I would do this for you. I would go in here, go to Connecticut, and I would search resumes for sonographer. and I would find sonographers. This is the passive job market, not even the active job market. This is the passive job market now. So I found sonographers in Connecticut, 46 of them. I'm going to reach out to every single one of them. And look at this. One of them is a vascular tech. I wonder if they're a sonographer now, but they have vascular experience. But anyways, I'm going to find all these people and I'm going to email them. And I'm going to move quick. I'm going to create a list, sonographers in CT for Randall to be a fixer. And then once I create that list, I'm not going to create it now, but then I'm going to send them an email. Just real quick. I'm moving fast. It takes me less than a minute. Send an email to all these people. Mail merge is built in. They're all going to get a personal email. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put, and there's a variable basically that you'll have. You can ask me if you forget it, but basically I'm going to do something like this. And I don't like dear because I'm keeping it fresh and authentic. Hey, contact first name. So hey Alana, hey Mandy, hey Raquel. You open to new career opportunities. I have a hiring manager near you that is looking for someone with your experience. And then I might put some stuff in there like, hey, reply back to me. Or I like to just actually send the actual link to the rec so they can apply directly, upload their resume. And then when they do, it'll show up in that pipeline view right here. So it'll show up in the inbox. So again, if you remember your training, all of those applicants, just like when you applied to us, they show up in inbox. I move them to screening whenever I reach out to them. So as you can see here, Nicole, I reach out to her, and I've reached out a couple times, just trying to follow up on my voicemail. It's a phone business. So I'm calling her, I'm emailing her. Hey, just see my previous email below. Are you interested? Hey, following up on my email, just leaving you a voicemail. This person, again, I was trying to poach her from another organization, wherever she is, happy at today, which if I look in her resume is probably Northwell Health in Chappaqua, New York. And I'm just trying to see if she's interested. She's probably not interested, and she's just, having a good old time where she's doing, and she's ignoring my email. Fine. So she stays in screening because I haven't heard from her. If I hear from you, I'm going to move you to responded. So I'm going to go to activities. Now I'm having a conversation. We're in business. I'm learning more about her, so I'm going to move them to responded. If I like them and I want to put them in front of the client, I'm going to move them to presented. So long story short, was able to look in this hospital, realize there was some piece of data missing. Try to figure out who the hiring manager was for a sonographer, since that's what led me to Greenwich in the first place. I was looking at this requisition view, and I was trying to figure out like, okay, somebody, a previous employee, was searching for a sonographer in Farmingdale. Why? Who? Realized it was for this hospital. Realized the hiring manager for that specific department wasn't in the contacts. Used LinkedIn to find that it wasn't David Passaretti, who is clearly in plastics and reconstructive surgery. It was actually David Cefarelli. And then I can find all the activities tied to this person. So activities can be tied to an organization, or it can be tied to a contact, or it can be tied to a requisition. So you want to check, you want to triangulate what's going on here. How do I get more information? What slipped through the cracks? And I just did a quick little read, got familiarized with what was going on, called David, said, and again, even if they're salty, they're still already shown me their tell. They've already said, hey, I need help because they're still looking for that job. So I'm here to help. And let's talk about what that looks like. And he said, sure enough, yeah, I still need these candidates. And oh, by the way, you still owe me a replacement. And so fast forward, 28 days later, I place Katie, Catherine, and got this $22,000 fee, cleared that credit, rehabilitated that relationship. And what was cool there is, if you probably saw in here, this Alexandra DiCello, she's the HR manager. So I'm talking to David, the department manager, who's going to make the hiring decisions, going to be doing the interviewing. Alexandra is now on the HR side, the talent side, and they're working hand in hand. And so I always tell you, when you're talking to these people, you want to know the process, you want to know the protocol so you don't step on toes. Should I send the resumes to HR first? Should I send resumes to the department manager first? Should I blind copy, CC you? What should I do? Sometimes they want you to already know the availability of the candidate, like when they might be ready for an interview, just to skip a step. And so sometimes I'll have that. In this specific case, I wanted to build a relationship with Alexandra. So I'm, therapy, the department manager only cares about their hire. So he only cares about the sonographers. Alexandra cares about the whole organization. But I didn't, be tactful, and so I wanted to deliver value first. So once the minute we placed Catherine, I then pinged Alexandra and I was like, hey, what else do you need help with? And sure enough, we need help with MRI techs. And that was, super easy. Actually, I think it might even be in here. Let's see if I can find it real fast while I got you. Yeah. So somewhere kind of right along here, I said Roger on it. Um, I don't want to waste your time, but if I go through here, there is a note from Alexander saying, yeah, we need help with MRI techs. And that's, when I went back in. And if you go to requisitions and I clear out the sonographer, and I just look here, and I immediately loaded, new job opportunities, and now I put a bunch of, MRI techs in here as well, and basically tech positions. Let's clear out. You can actually multi-select these states, so I'm going to clear out New York because again, I thought it was stupid that we were looking in New York. And sure enough, here you go. See, I just started working this pipeline, MRI techs. So some I have sponsored on Indeed, some I don't. And again, I just duplicate them. So I created one, sponsored it on Indeed, then I duplicate it, and then this one I'm pushing into basically Google job boards, things like that. And again, you don't get to do that yet. Find somebody who is interested first. Then you unlock all this training, and I'll talk to you about how we do the rest of this. But see, I've got two people, in my inbox right now that I have to sort through that I haven't gotten to yet because I'm busy trying to coach you. I can already tell you right now, Tara, probably not a fit. Scored a 65. But Lindia scored an 85, might be a fit. And, Tara, not too far away. I don't see Lindia right away. So I wonder if she's trying to relocate. Again, that's a power of that map. Let's see. Click on Lindia. Where is she? Hamden, Connecticut. I don't even know where Hamden, Connecticut is, but sometimes I will do. It's not showing up here. So maybe it's sometimes when that happens, I just click on this, copy, and check out where Hamden, Connecticut is. See if she's a good candidate or not. Click on Hamden. Oh, yeah, it's not that far away at all. So right around New Haven. So I'm down here in Greenwich, but that is a stretch. But now here, and I'm just doing this on the fly right now. Here's what I just did. So Hamden's here, Greenwich is here, but remember what I said. Alexandra, look at this. Look at her email address. Yale New Haven Health, not David's email address, Greenwich Hospital. David only cares about Greenwich Hospital, and he only cares about sonographers. Alexandra cares about the entire system, and she just wants good candidates. So now if I go back to this MRI tech that has just applied, that I got to get back to today, because I'm going to get back to her right away. I'm just because she's in Hamden, I'm not thinking about Greenwich anymore. I'm thinking about Yale New Haven. They have a hospital in New Haven. They have a hospital in Bridgeport. They have a hospital in Greenwich. I'm going to see if she's interested in the New Haven position. So that's how powerful this stuff becomes, and it starts to build upon itself. Whether you're a fire starter or a fixer, all of the or a fielder. Fielder again is the easy stuff, but I want you to start out being a fire starter. If you can do this, you can do anything. And then I want you to want to be a fixer, and I'll help you. And then along the way, you'll be able to do some fielding. And I'll tell you what, the reward is pretty significant. 50 days to change your life. 50 days to generate over $50,000 in fees. Average confirmation to close about 35 days. This is something that is immensely doable and something that you can do right now and will help you. So get out there, start making some calls, and good luck. Happy hunting.